All right, friends, how we doing? Welcome to Science Seminar. Are we ready to get this party started? Oh, that wasn't good enough. I'm not accepting that on a Warrior Wednesday. Are we ready to get this party started? Awesome. That's a little better. I'll take it. I'll take it. All right, so welcome to Science Seminar. You'll notice that if you're a student, all the students should have one of these sheets. What this is it's your attendance sheets. Again, this is not mandatory, but there's a lot of groups and organizations such as honors, clubs, classrooms that have said, hey, if you show up, maybe you'll get a bonus point or something. Or there's incentives for you to do that. So how that works is you're going to put in your first and last name and then your student ID number. And that will allow me to log your attendance in here, and I can distribute it to everyone at the university that needs to know. So please make sure, again, if you're a student, you have one of these. Does anyone need a pencil? All right, we have some pencils that will be floating around the room.
Always bring a pencil.
I will bring a box of pencils to all future seminars, I promise, and also just try to have one. We will do a seminar every month, and this month we are super excited to invite some friends. Our first friend joining us today is Diane Kolinsky, and she is the director of the PharmD program over at Manchester. It's been really great getting to know her over the last, 2-3 years? About that timeline. And she actually helped me build the pharmaceutical science bachelor's that we have here. And so we have a direct connection. It's been a lot of fun. Also joining us today, we have Dr. Melanie Fenley. Did I get it right? No, give it to me again. Felmley. Dr. Felmley is joining us freshly from California and is the director of the Masters of Pharmacogenomics. So you're going to learn about pharmacogenomics a little bit today. But the whole idea of the seminar today is to really talk about our partnership. We'll last about an hour. You have snacks in the hallway. You're free to come and go at will. Thank you. This is being recorded. If you want to watch it again later, it will be on a Canvas page, which will be launching for all of the science students to see shortly. So without further ado, please welcome our friends from Manchester, and thank you for your time.
All right, well, good afternoon. Thank you for being here. As Dr. Bachel said, I'm Diane Kolinsky, and I work at Manchester University. I thought I'd kind of just start by getting a feel for the room, kind of understand who I'm talking to here. So how many of you are freshmen? Woo! Okay, so is it sophomores? Okay, got a few. Anybody upperclassmen? Yeah? Cool. Awesome. Well, welcome. I'll kind of first start by just telling you a little bit about myself and how I ended up where I am in life. So this is me, Dr. Kolinsky. I grew up in Buffalo, New York. Any Buffalo, New York people? Almost. I know. Yeah, really? Are you from Buffalo? Oh my gosh, we'll have to connect later and see if we have anything in common. So I grew up there in Buffalo, and I went to my undergraduate school at Penn State University, so a little bit west and south of Buffalo, and I studied biochemistry. Do you have any biochemistry majors? Were you thinking about biochemistry? Molecular biology? Any of that good stuff? Okay, so I studied biochemistry, and when I finished biochemistry, I didn't know what I was going to do with my life, but I really liked college. I really liked learning, and so I thought, well, I'll just keep going, and I'll do a PhD. And so I went to the University of Michigan for my PhD, and yeah, here we go. I knew I'd get somebody eventually. That's kind of a polarizing force here in the Midwest. So yeah. You're either Ohio State or you're Michigan. So I went to Michigan for my PhD, where I studied cytochrome P450s, which is a class of enzymes that break down drugs. So whenever you take a drug, your body needs to metabolize it, needs to chemically modify it in some way so that it can then exit your body. And so the class of enzymes that I studied were the ones that do that modification, so that it allows you to excrete the drug after you take it. And so that's a picture of what a cytochrome, well, a cartoon of a cytochrome P450 there. You'll see it's with its little buddy, the oxide reductase, that helps it do its work, and it sticks in a membrane, so it's a cell membrane, if you haven't thought about these things in a while. But that's basically, I spent 7 years looking at this one particular reaction and trying to understand if I could take a chemotherapy drug, a common chemotherapy drug that's used to treat breast cancer. And I was studying if I could try and force it down a certain metabolic pathway to make it more active in the patient and get it away from a toxic pathway. So that's why I studied for a long time. When I finished my PhD, I didn't know again what I was going to do, but I knew I really loved to teach. I had been doing a lot of work on the bench top. And so I wanted to get back into a classroom where I could interact and do things like this and meet students. And so Manchester University had just opened a pharmacy program. This was about 2012. And I had never heard of Manchester University. When I told my husband we were going to move to Fort Wayne, he said, Texas, great. He thought it was Fort Worth. But we ended up here in Fort Wayne, and we've been here now for 12 years. This is my dog, Norman. I put the dog on the slide. I don't put my husband on the slide because he's here. Yeah, so that's Norm. And you might see, and some of you might not know him. My husband's name is Sam. If you remember the show Cheers, we're Sam and Diane from the show Cheers. And then we named our dog Norm, who was a very famous character, and he just passed away. You might have seen him lately. He's, a big rotund guy, and he had all the beer jokes. That's who Norm's named after. And I actually live down the street from here, so you might see me walking around if you ever make your way down to West Central. I walk Norman every day, and so you might see me around. So that's me. But like I said, I've been here in Fort Wayne now for 12 years. It's definitely become my home. I love it here. And I wanted to point out some of the other things that we do on the Fort Wayne campus. So one of the things that we're trying to kind of bring out is that Manchester does have 2 locations. So Manchester University has a location in North Manchester, Indiana, which is pretty far away from here. It's about 40 minutes, maybe an hour drive. But in 2012, we opened up our second campus, and that's in Fort Wayne, Indiana. So this is just up the road. It took me 20 minutes, but it's not far. And it's located right on the Parkview campus. So if you ever go up that way, you can see the building from 69. If you're going up 69 North, you can see our building. And we only house health science programs in that building. And so the programs that we have, pharmacy started it. But then shortly after, we started a master's in pharmacogenomics. And if you're not familiar with that term, we'll talk about what that is here. Then we also recently launched a Master's of Science in Nutrition and Nutrigenomics, and this program is all online, but what it does is after 2 years' time, you can sit for your registered dietetics exam, so you can become a registered dietitian if you're interested in that. We also moved a Master's of Athletic Training onto our campus, so these are the individuals that you see on the sidelines at games, high school games, or college, or even the NFL. For all the games, I suppose. And they are the people that kind of run onto the field and help athletes in their moment of need, and then help them a little bit afterwards to gain a little bit of their strength back. And then we also have a doctorate in physical therapy, which just launched like 2 years ago. And so we've got that going on, as well as several different nursing programs. So there's several different pathways you can become a nurse through Manchester. But these are kind of all of the programs that are located just up the street from you guys. Obviously, I'm going to focus on the pharmacogenomics and PharmD pathway today because those are what I'm most excited about. So I was hoping we could do a poll everywhere, but I don't think it's going to work because I think I have to be logged in. But you can tell me, what do you think a pharmacist does? Yeah.
Administer drugs.
Administer drugs. In certain circumstances, yeah.
They check if drugs are compatible with each other.
Yeah, they do. Exactly. They do what we call drug-drug interaction checking. So they make sure that if you've got one drug on board, that this other drug we were giving you isn't going to cause a problem.
They deal a lot with insurance.
Yes, they deal a lot with insurance. Now, that depends on the setting that you're in, but I can tell you, I mean, how many of you have been to a pharmacy recently? Yeah, that pharmacist is usually on the phone with somebody, right? And it's usually an insurance company. It might be a provider as well, somebody who wrote the prescription. What else? What kinds of settings do they work in? I just gave you one, right? Your CVS or your Walgreens. Where else could a pharmacist work? In a hospital, yeah. And there's a few different ways they work in hospitals too. What about drug companies? Drug companies. They work, yeah.
A lot of retail.
A lot of
Kroger,
retail.
CVS, Walgreens.
Yeah. A lot of pharmacists do work in retail, which means your CVS, your pharmacies. Sometimes we call those community pharmacies as well. We also have independent pharmacies, which are independently owned by the pharmacist or somebody who also owns it, and then they work there. So there's a lot of variety. And I'll say that I honestly didn't know what a pharmacist did before I started teaching pharmacy. I've been lucky to not be very sick my whole life. I've been to a pharmacy, maybe filled a few scripts and left. And I had no idea what a pharmacist did. And I just think that that was such a short-sightedness on my behalf. Although I went to big schools, you saw that. I didn't have a lot of guidance helping me figure out what I wanted to do with my life. And so when I became a faculty member at a pharmacy program, I was blown away by all of the different professions that a pharmacist can do. So if you're ever thinking about pharmacy, or if you're not even sure, like kind of what all options are available to you, I encourage you to use this QR code, and I can share this later, or I can share with you later. This is a program, it's not a Manchester program, it's a nationwide program trying to show people all of the different ways and different things you can do with a PharmD degree. So it's a really fun, I think there's like a little survey you can take, and it's kind of like a choose your own adventure, and like, what do you like to do, and what do you not like to do? And it'll guide you down a path if a pharmacy is right for you. Okay, so we mentioned pharmacists work in CVS or Walgreens. I've got kind of an image of that here. You see that you've got pharmacists talking to one another, or maybe the pharmacist is talking to their pharmacy technician. Pharmacists are definitely in those settings. They are the leaders, right? So they are the people that are helping the pharmacy technicians kind of get through their day-to-day functions. They're making sure that all of the scripts are getting filled. They work interprofessionally because they're talking to healthcare providers on the phone. They do all kinds of things. They're not just standing there counting pills, which I think is what I thought they did before I became a faculty member. This is also a picture of a pharmacist. So this is what we would consider to be an ambulatory care pharmacist. Who knows what ambulatory care means? It's a good one. This is good. You should take this back. Ambulatory just means that you're walking. It means that you are able to move. So ambulatory care means that these patients are coming in, they walk into the clinic, and they meet their pharmacist in the room, and they sit down, and they have a conversation with their pharmacist. So an ambulatory care pharmacist works with any kind of patient that is able to ambulate, able to come in and go. I know. I thought they worked in ambulances. They don't. So an ambulatory care pharmacist typically has an agreement with an MD or DO, somebody who can write prescriptions, or an NP. They have an agreement with them so that the pharmacist is able to adjust the prescriptions for their patient in the moment. So they typically manage like chronic diseases, so things like hypertension or diabetes. Those are their two kind of main bread and butters. And so they will see a patient come in, they will go through their labs, they will say, we need to adjust your hypertension medicine, or your A1C for your diabetes is out of control and we need to adjust your diabetes. And then they can do that right in the moment. They'll change the prescription, and then the patient will kind of go on their way, come back a few months later, and you get to see the same pharmacist, you get to have that same interaction. So you really get kind of this personalized care with ambulatory care. I think this would have been a really attractive field to go into, because I like interacting with people, but I wasn't quite sure that I could be a pharmacist. So the other thing I want to point out about this ambulatory care is that this is also where I think pharmacogenomics is going to play a big role in helping patients navigate what their genetic profile is doing with regards to their drugs. This is also a picture of a pharmacist. So these are pharmacists that are going on rounds. So many pharmacists at hospitals they'll tell you they work in the basement. At Parkview, that's not the case. They work upstairs. They have windows. But in that case, those are the people that are kind of filling your scripts, right? So they're in the hospital filling scripts and then sending it out to the floor for nurses to administer. But there's also pharmacists that walk around and see patients. They round with doctors. They're in the room, they're in the huddle. It takes extra training, but they're in the huddle and they're seeing patients in the hospital, rounding on them, offering advice about what medicine to take. And then this is also a pharmacist. So this is a nuclear pharmacist. If you're a person who likes to be alone in a room and maybe work night shifts and kind of not talk to anybody, if you're a loner, nuclear pharmacy is the way to go for you because you can literally work a night shift. You have to do it. You have to create these drugs kind of overnight because their half-lives are so short they will expire. So you have to do it overnight so that you can get that to the patients in the morning. But it's also a great option if you kind of just want to work a night shift and then be on your way. And the reason she's all kind of hooded up and everything is because she is working with radiation. And then this is also an option. So these are the people that I work with, right? So we have a lot of PharmDs in our faculty, and they are teaching patients or teaching students what to do. They typically, a pharmacist that is a faculty member typically has a practice site that they go to and they take students there and they help them learn in the practice site. But then they also come back and they teach on campus. And so they kind of split their time. Any questions about that? Anything I'm missing?
My favorite one.
What's your favorite one?
Veterinary pharmacy.
Yes.
You could work in a zoo.
Yeah.
I have a former student that now works at a zoo.
So veterinary pharmacy, if you didn't hear it. So yeah, that's another, and that's a huge expanding field as well. Where we have more pets getting prescriptions, all that kind of stuff, but also working in things like a zoo setting. There's a Purdue pharmacy has a vet clinic as well, and so does Michigan State. So what is the pharmacist responsible for? You've already told me some of the tasks, but one of the main things that pharmacists do is they make sure that the efficacy of the drug is correct. So is the drug working for your patient or not? And you can see this slide. It's a little bit unsettling when you take a look at this. It says it's small, so I'll read it out loud, that the percentage of patient population for which a particular drug in a class is ineffective on average. So if you're looking at antidepressants, approximately 40% of people won't respond to a particular class of drugs. Now, right now, the way that we prescribe antidepressants is you go to your doctor, you get diagnosed, and then we say, okay, well, the doctor says, here's my favorite antidepressant that I know works in most of my patients, so here you go, try it out. 3 weeks later, we check in and say, is it working or not? If it's not, then we change again and we try another one, right? Until you get to a drug that works for you. That's not really great if you're in a depressive state, right? You're kind of trying to look for a mood-altering drug very quickly, and it just doesn't work that way. Asthma drugs, about 40% of asthma drugs are going to be ineffective in certain patient populations. And you can kind of read down the list. Diabetes, arthritis, Alzheimer's, and then cancer being kind of the worst of those. And the reason I put this up is because this ties into pharmacogenomics. So a big reason why these drug classes are ineffective in these disease states is because of this particular makeup of the patient. So this is kind of the future, it is the future of pharmacy, where we start to say, okay, well, I can dial in this drug, or I can pick a better drug class to start you on because I know what your genetic profile is. So pharmacists are directly responsible for if drugs are working. They're also responsible for preventing adverse effects, which include things like drug-drug interactions that you had mentioned earlier. So here, what we're looking at is, I'm also tying this into pharmacogenomics because if you have a particular genetic profile, you might not want to take a certain drug because it's going to be toxic to you. So if I can prevent that ahead of time by knowing what your genetic profile is and never giving you that drug, that's helpful as well. So Pharmacists are responsible for if drugs are working, and they're responsible for preventing adverse drug effects. And this really ties, it ties back to a bunch of things, but one of them that is very kind of basic is the pharmacogenomic basis. So pharmacogenomics, I keep throwing this term out there. It literally stands for pharmaco, meaning drug, genomics, meaning the genetics or your background. And the idea is that at one point in time, we would say, you have hypertension. I'm going to give you lisinopril at this dose, which is what I give all of my patients. But that doesn't mean that that's going to work for me because maybe I have a genetic background, right? And now that drug either doesn't work, or maybe I've accumulated too much of that drug because I can't get it out of my body. So those are some of the things that we are trying to prevent with pharmacogenomics. So in pharmacogenomics, so that's kind of the traditional treatment method. And if you look to the right, you've got personalized medicine based on genetics. And so here, we take the patient and we say, what is your genetic makeup? And we look at the key genes that we know are important. So some of those metabolizing enzymes, like the one I studied in the PhD program, some of the drug targets that we know. And we say, based on your genetic profile, this class of drugs isn't going to work for you, or you need to be on this class of drugs. Any questions about that?
Wouldn't genetic testing be very expensive in the long term?
That is also a great question. So the question was, would it be expensive in the long run? And the answer is that it's getting cheaper and cheaper. It's gotten to the point now where you can run so if you you can pick up one of these kits at your pharmacy. If you go to your pharmacy, you look on the shelves, you can find a kit where you can take they call a buccal swab, which is just a cheek swab. You send it into the company and they will send you back your genetic report, and that's less than $100. So it's getting much, much less expensive. Yeah, a few years ago, and that was actually a huge barrier to pharmacogenomics getting picked up in the field because it was like, we can't afford to do these genetic sequences. Well, now, pretty easy. And in fact, if you've got, how many of you read the local news? Yeah. So Parkview just announced a partnership with a company that they're going to be doing some genetic testing, and it'll be kind of like seamless into your care type of situation. So if you're curious about that, you can look up Parkview and genetic testing, and they literally just announced it, I think, on Monday of this week. So, yeah. All right, so I want to give a good example because I feel like sometimes you can't quite fathom like what the power of pharmacogenomics can be. And this is the classic example, and it is a dramatic one, so I'll just preface it with that. But this is the one that you can really see the impact of what pharmacogenomics can do if it's used properly. So back about 20 years ago, there was a young child, I think he didn't make it very long, he was about 3 months old. And he was brought into the emergency room because he wasn't breathing, and he wasn't responsive. And they did an autopsy, and they revealed that the child had died from a morphine overdose. So immediately, right, we all go to like, well, who's giving this kid morphine, right? Like, how did he get access to morphine? He's a child, he's an infant. How did he get access to morphine? Well, they went back to the parents and they said, well, what is going on? And the mother had said, she said, I've been using codeine for pain. My pregnancy was kind of a difficult pregnancy. I need some pain relief, and she'd been prescribed codeine. How many of you have heard of codeine? Have you ever taken codeine? Sometimes, yeah. They're trying to stop giving codeine because of things like this. So the way that codeine works is it doesn't work. It's a prodrug. It doesn't work until it gets into your body, and then that chemical modification happens, and it turns it into morphine. So I showed you this reaction here, right? So we've got codeine, and it becomes metabolized into morphine. And then the thing that provides the pain relief that's associated with codeine use is the morphine. It has nothing to do with codeine. So this enzyme that causes this conversion is known as CYP2D6. And I have a different CYP2D6 level, and you have a different one, you have a different one. Everybody has a slightly different CYP2D6 level. And it turns out that Rainey, the mother, had what is called an ultra-rapid metabolism type, which means instead of just converting this 10% of the dose of codeine, she was converting something like 90%. And that was enough to get into her breast milk, so that when she then breastfed her baby, she was dosing her baby with morphine. Totally unknown. And so this is a good example. Well, this is part of why we're stopping using coding. Hopefully you see that less and less in the field, but also this is a good example of if we had known this, she would have never been prescribed codeine to control her pain. We have other pain medications we could do, right? So this is a really good example. And like I said, this is a very dramatic one. There's lots of less dramatic ones. I've had friends who have gone on that antidepressant trial that I just told you about. I've had friends that have done that have tried antidepressant after. And finally, at some point, somebody said, let's do a genetic panel. And then they got him on the right dose. So that's a positive story there. We've got lots of examples. So, how common is this? It's becoming more and more common. So currently there's 300, at last I checked, 315 different guidelines for using pharmacogenomics in care. So it's getting pretty common, and you can take a look at that if you're interested in this kind of thing. This website, PharmD, puts together kind of all of the scientific background, and then it'll also direct you to a guideline if you're curious about it. But these are really common drugs, right? Like, so Lipitor, that's a really common drug. Almost everybody ends up taking some of it, especially men. That's a cholesterol-lowering drug. So it's really common. Celebrex is a type of pain relief. Fluorouracil is a type of chemotherapy. Paxil is a type of antidepressant, right? And tamoxifen is another type of used for breast cancer prevention and control. And each of these are related to, these are just some common examples. They're related to the gene, and I've got the gene kind of highlighted up above that. Ooh. All right, so how do we get from like here into there? How do we get from this classroom into practicing pharmacogenomics in a pharmacy? Well, and this is what I'm really excited about, because this is the first of its kind. Do you know of any pharmacy programs like this? Yeah. We've both been around pharmacy education for a long time. I've never seen a model like this before. So I'm really like in all of the United States. So this is very exciting stuff. So we had a meeting. I was trying to recruit some people for pharmacogenomics, and we thought, how can we do this? So here's kind of the current way that most people get into PharmDs or practicing. So currently, there's about 60 credit hours of prerequisite coursework. It takes you about 2 years. And at the end of that, you either have no degree, you just have your prerequisites, or some people will award an associate's degree. So you get an associate's degree, and then you go into your doctorate of pharmacy program. And then after about 4 years, depends, because you can have an accelerated program, so you can have 3 years, something like that. After about that time, or about 144 credits, you take an exam, you become a pharmacist. About half of our class goes this route. The other half of our existing class at Manchester goes this route, which is that they do a full bachelor's, so 4 years or whatever, 120 credit hours worth. Then they complete that bachelor's, and then they come to Manchester and they do another 4 years and get their PharmD and become a pharmacist. So these are kind of the traditional pathways. If you wanted to become a pharmacist that specializes in pharmacogenomics, there's a few different ways you could do that as well. So you could, complete your undergrad, get into the PharmD program the way that we kind of just talked about. But you could also, at Manchester, we do a dual degree, so you could do both degrees at the same time, your PharmD and your master's. You graduate at the same time, finish in 4 years and get to do that type of practice. The other way that I've seen a lot of, because of the way we teach this program, there are other people that get their PharmD at another program. They get out, they start practicing, they're interested in pharmacogenomics, they find our program, they do it online, and they do that in 2 years. So that would be like, your 4 years plus 2 years of a master's on top of that. So these are kind of the traditional paths that we see to getting into this. But this is the pathway that we've just launched or created between Indiana Tech and Manchester University. So here, what you're going to end up doing in this pathway or this fast track to pharmacy is in the first 2 years approximately, you're going to be completing your prerequisite courses here. In that third year, you start to take pharmacy courses at Manchester. So you come on over to our campus, you take about, a few credit hours, and then you mix that in with credits that you're taking here to complete your undergrad. So you do this in your third and in your fourth year. In the fourth year, by the time you finish your 4th year, you will have earned your Bachelor's of Pharmaceutical Sciences from Indiana Tech. You will have also completed the 1st year of the pharmacy program. So you'll roll into us at year 5 as what we call a P2. So it's your 2nd year pharmacist. It's also when you start our dual degree, so you'll start your Master's of Pharmaceutical Sciences, or excuse me, Master's of Pharmacogenomics. So you do that between year 6 and 7, you are finishing the PharmD curriculum as well as your Master's, and at the end of year 7, you have completed the whole program, which includes your undergrad, your Master's, and your PharmD. So you can jump right into practicing as a pharmacogenomics specialist if you want to. There's a few different paths you could choose after that. The nicest thing kind of about this program, or the thing that I think makes this most attractive, is that year 3 into year 4, when you are taking those classes with us at Manchester as PharmDs, as professional students, you are paying undergraduate tuition through Indiana Tech. It's a significant cost savings. I have some money slides later if you're curious. But that to me makes this the most attractive because it's expensive, right? And so to be able to get those classes at a rate that is discounted is huge. Any questions about that? I got the money on the next slide. All right. The other thing, and I kind of was going through this last night, I'm thinking like, how do I even explain this? If you could go through each of these pathways and you start adding them up, and still this fast track is the best thing to do. It gets you there the fastest. It also gets you there in the least expensive way. It also gets you there with all 3 degrees as opposed to doing like an associate's or having no degree and then jumping into PharmD. So I had gone through all these pathways. I'm like, no, this is still the most efficient way of doing this if this is your jam, right? So program costs, if you go the traditional route, you'll be paying, which is fine, because sometimes, taking time is good too. But if you go the traditional route, you end up covering all of your prerequisite costs, which would be at least 60 credit hours of undergrad, if not longer, if you decide to do a bachelor's degree. And then the PharmD with the master's in pharmacogenomics, the way that we offer it, that ends up costing about $200,000. Expensive. If you go the fast track, which gets you all 3 degrees, bachelor's, master's, and the PharmD in 7 years, that total cost ends up being about $180,000. So it's a significant savings in the long run, and it gets you there faster. Oh, I put the money there. Difference is $22,000. All right. So this is just comparing the 2 programs again, the 2 different pathways again. Again, talking about the time, the degrees that you get earned, as well as the cost. So this is a summary. And I want to talk about what happens after. So we've mentioned this several times. We've mentioned you can get into a CVS or a Walgreens. You can typically do that with your PharmD. You're done. You get snatched up into a community setting. The other example would be like an independent pharmacy. Do these people practice pharmacogenomics? Yes. I have alumni that work at Meyer across the street from my campus, and they say, I had a person walk in today with their pharmacogenomic report and ask what to do about their drugs. So luckily she had been in our dual degree program, so she was able to, she wasn't caught off guard, and she was able to look at this material and this information and help that patient guide them towards like, yes, this is an appropriate therapy for you. So that can happen right away. Once you get your PharmD, they are looking for pharmacists. If you like this, and if you enjoy school, and if you want to become specialized and you want to do more, there's 2 different paths after that. You could do a residency or a fellowship. And residencies come in the flavor, many people are familiar with medical school residencies. It's a little bit different. There's a PGY1 and a PGY2 that stands for postgraduate year 1, postgraduate year 2. And this will give you kind of like PGY1 gives you a little bit of flavor of everything. It's kind of like you get to practice in a hospital, but many times they'll also throw you into classrooms. So you get to teach, and you kind of get to do a little bit of everything. But it really elevates your game in terms of like practicing in a hospital setting. And then PGY2 tends to be these specialty areas. So like you would apply and pick for one. So there's actually one in pharmacogenomics if you want to, if you want to keep going down that field, there's a PGY2 that's focused just on pharmacogenomics. But there's also PGY2s that are in things like oncology and internal medicine and ambulatory care, if you liked that setting where you're sitting with a person and talking to them every day. But these are optional. And then you can also do a fellowship training, and fellowship training tends to be more industry driven. It tends to be more like data sciences, more FDA and regulatory affairs types of stuff. So we have a lot of alumni that went and did a 2-year fellowship at Indianapolis in Indianapolis at IU. And well, actually some of them have done pharmacogenomics in those settings, but also they've done things like, work with the FDA to make a drug go from like a starting chemical to an actual drug. And like, how does that process work? Well, you have to work with the FDA. And so they would, doing some patent type of stuff as well. And so they've kind of run the gauntlet in terms of what you can do with a fellowship. Am I missing anything? I keep looking back at you.
Pharmacokinetics is fellowship too, but.
What's that?
Pharmacokinetics. If you're if you love math, you can do math in pharmacy.
Yeah.
Really, did everyone go like, no, thank you?
And I'll share like a little funny story. I mentioned this earlier. Like if I had known what a pharmacist could do, I would have gone down this path. But I was deterred because I was told that there was too much chemistry. And now, like I teach this chemistry and I ended up doing a PhD with a lot of chemistry background in it. And so like, do not be deterred by people that say that there's a lot of math or chemistry, because it's not as much as, it should not stop you from doing something very fulfilling like this type of career. All right, and that's kind of all that I had about the program and its fast track and what pharmacists do and pharmacogenomics is, but I'm happy to address any questions that you guys might have. Also, that the black and white QR code will take you to my email address, so you can send me an email if you have something. I've also started an Instagram account that tries to like be cool and keep you updated with all the cool fun things that are going on our campus. And so if you want to follow me on Instagram, I'd love that, because I like to connect with people that way. So. Thank you so much for your attention.
All right, friends, and so I'm assuming you'll stick around for a few minutes afterwards if you want to chat with our friends from Manchester. Also, if you want to chat with me, I have my cards that'll be sitting up here because I run the Indiana Tech side of this deal, and so it's a great program. Tell your friends. A lot of people don't even know this exists here at Tech yet. And when you go to leave, please give me your sheet with your name and stuff on it. And thank you. Grab food. Please take food home and have a great day. Thank you all so much. Thank you. Thank you. That's fine. Just sit it right there. All right, now I'll be here. So thank you so much. Thank you. I got it. Thank you so much.
I grew up
Wow, thank you. This is instead of. Really?
My best friend was. Yeah, I had to go to the diagnostic. I have a farm. Yeah. I was gonna be that. Me too. I think I was sympathetic for Annie too. And like, I'm so much. Yeah, I just didn't want to go to med. I changed in my undergrad. Yeah.
How we doing?
Oh, you lost.
Yeah, question.
Oh, that was the no to math group.
All right, what is up?
So, I talked to you like late last year, and no, you're kidding. And I was going into
This is what we're doing.
yes.
Sorry. Oh, yes, I knew you guys are here. I've only been in India since July. Yeah, me too. I'm on the East Coast. I was in California. What part of California? So Northern
So
California.
yeah, it is dry and we can switch over. But you're exactly where you need to
undergrad in research semester in Berkeley.
Yeah.
That's
Our office is
I
right
mean,
upstairs.
you were further north than that. No, Sacramento. Yeah, and I was in between. So the university, I was in 3 cities. So we had a campus in San Francisco, Stockholm. Okay. What city was it? University of Okay. Instead of like starting a pharmacy. Yeah.
A lot of you'll see
I would be in California. I like a drug test. Our guinea pig.
Oh, wow. Okay. We did 2 years undergrad. Okay, 2 years undergrad. And then come talk about it's not. What's
Yeah. I wish I had done.
And I had something weird. They would finish when I and yeah, we have to like design extra things and like pacemakers. It's just that since we contract our larger OEM companies are so we have that we sell our yeah, and I was gonna say and race like one of our parents just like the direct contact. So but it was really cool and a really good experience. Because we're scary. So yeah. Just do it. That person probably not practicing or med school. Or med school. So a farm sci undergrad combined with a master's in PGX. Full disclosure, I'm doing med. She wants to go to PA school.
Right, I know, I knew of her, and so she was here, I didn't get a chance.
Oh, no, she's with us.
Oh, she is definitely.
I taught her this morning.
And she's in lab this afternoon, so she's like going there.
And I think her
I have some other cool
master's
things
and
that we
not
talked
the
last time.
yes, all the applications. Okay, yep.
What do you think
Good.
about it?
All right, well, good, you can tell us the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, and again, thank you for being here.
It is, because I was looking at.
That was this is the first time I've talked about this. My other thing I wanted to do because I was like, I'm like, did anybody stop? Like, you want to go to a bachelor's? It's not there, but you just have to go to a bachelor's on the side. And they ended up like, and I'm curious if that is something that like, that we've had several students come to the science.
Oh, about like
So, yeah, and so that also is another thing to talk about. But also the dual, the PGX, we went over them.
There, especially there are certain pharmaceutical companies that are very, most of their drugs are designed based on, they're trying to hit a specific thing.
Yeah. So if someone does want to do just the master's, do they go 1 year past the 4 years, or do they do 2 years past the 4 years? Or is that okay. So then we can look at it and see if we want to like.
Because the way it's designed, they take it.
They're taking the PharmD courses that first year over 2 years and not necessarily PGX
That's
courses.
a good idea, because showing that versatility.
So we might.
Potential to design.
Yeah.
Well, and the way.
So it's kind of like.
This is a paper that someone left early. So, sorry. No, but yes. So, I was like, also working with
Yeah, she's
PhD in
also-
Buffalo. I did my PhD in Buffalo at UB. So one of the things that we have in our is we just have a chunk.
That's a good Alex question. That starts in like 10 minutes. We have 10
Right,
minutes.
so yeah, so we don't
Alex
have
already
a-
left, so.
Yeah, and you're listed out there. That's the one.
Yeah.
So we could, yeah, so we could do that
I don't know.
instead. I would just be your.
I never-
Okay, well, we'll see. And we go to your round, like master's program goes your round, like we have those all the time. There's some that are online, so it's easier to leverage in undergrad curriculum.
Oh, nice.
They're asynchronous. Yeah, so we don't have to worry about just getting, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm afraid to ask.
But there are some things where
Okay, yeah, might have these sports.
Anyway.
Maybe an online course is a better option for me.
So we wouldn't have overlapped.
Right.
For you, the internship.
Anyone, but I should, Gina. But-
That's crazy.
I was like, I forgot to, where do I get pizza here? That's